This is what I'm focusing on. There are a lot of other things that are interesting about the prospects for a mega project in Tobago called Tobago Sandals. And some of those things might include environmental aspects. I see a couple of environmental comrades in the audience. They may include aspects about local content and so on. They may include aspects about the land market. I see a couple of people from the land and surveying profession with me in the audience. But I am focused on the underlying commercial arrangements, which is what really drive these developments. The only reason the developments take place is because the underlying commercial arrangements are fruitful for the major parties who are involved. If the underlying commercial arrangements don't work, there's no development. Therefore, the underlying commercial arrangements are decisive. I am here to discuss what is decisive. The current proposal being put forward by the administration, which is the P&M administration led by Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, is a proposal I would summarize as follows. So Sandals is going to build 2 resorts. I think there's a Sandals resort, which is couples only. And there's a Beaches resort, which is family-oriented, totaling about 750 rooms on the piece of land we know as Golden Grove or oblique no man's land, that parcel of land belonging to Angostura in the past. The government's input will be the land, because the land was transferred. The companies that hold the land, the shares of those companies were transferred to the state some time ago. The actual complex will be constructed in some kind of a public-private partnership arrangement with Guardian Holdings and the Massey Group, Nila Massey. And Dr. Rowley announced this. It was in, I don't often read, but I will read. On Friday, the 3rd of November, Dr. Rowley announced this, and he was saying that Guardian Life agreed to come in and take equity, and Massey has agreed. So he approached 3 business houses, and 2 out of 3 agreed. And these were signals to him that the project had feet and it had wings. The completed project would be managed by the Sandals Resort International as one of their chain of resorts, okay? That's the outline of the agreement. And Dr. Rowley said, I'm going to quote him, "That is nothing new to us. We built a Hilton in Trinidad. Government owned. Hilton is managing it and running it. Any problem?" He asked rhetorically. Later on, we built the Hyatt on the waterfront. Who is managing it? The government owns, and the Hyatt is running it. So if we build one in Tobago, on the scale of what we are talking about, expand tourism, what is wrong with that? So that was Dr. Rowley's statement. There were some other things he said, but I'm not going to go into that. We need to move along. So the next slide, Novak, we have to have some hotel hashtags here. Hashtag the no-tell hotel, because it's a big secret. Hashtag, do our dollars make sense? Hashtag, the code of silence is a kind of violence. Hashtag, who runs this place anyway? Hashtag, unearthing the facts. We go to the next slide, please. And the next slide is about the public money test. And if we are discussing an investment decision, because this is what this is, it's an investment decision of a vast amount of public money. Back in April or May this year, there was a feature, it was erroneous in the international financial press. It may have been the Bloomberg, or it may have been US money, that in fact Sandals was looking to sell the hotel group to Deutsche Bank, which is a German investment bank. And Adam Stewart, Butch's son, who's the CEO, gave an interview in Bloomberg where he clarified that in fact they weren't selling, they were trying to raise capital for the next stage of Sandals investments. And the amount of capital they needed to raise, there wasn't enough headroom among the Caribbean banks from whom they traditionally borrow. So they approached Deutsche Bank, and he described some of the projects, the next 3 or 4 projects they were going to do. And Adam Stewart actually said in that interview that they needed to borrow $500 million US to do Tobago Sandals. Okay, it's not a budgeted figure, it's not a contractor's estimate, but gives us an idea of the size of the project. So we're talking about $3.5 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. If it's about 500 million US dollars. And even though that $3.5 billion may be injected from the investment of Massey and Guardian, it is going to be repaid by a lease rent from our government. Therefore, it is a species of investment, and it's an investment we need to be mindful about. It's an expenditure of public money, it's a transaction in public money, and therefore it needs to be held to a higher standard. Public money ought to be held to a higher standard than private money. It's raised by coercion. All of those millions of dollars we would have to repay in a lease rent to Guardian and to Neil and Massey. Those are our dollars, and they need to be managed to a higher standard. No bad. The next thing we need to state, which many people are unaware of, is that the three largest hotels in the country belong to the state. The sequence in which they were built was Trinidad Hilton in 1962, Tobago Hilton, now known as Magdalena Grand, built in about 2000, and we're going to talk a lot about that, and Hyatt Regency on the waterfront, opened in January of 2008. In the case of Trinidad Hilton, we have a hotel that was started to be refurbished in about 2008. And that hotel is still under refurbishment. Last year in April, the chairman of ETEC is a company that runs that has the government side of the contract for that property. The chairman of ETEC is Robert Solomon, and Robert Solomon was being interviewed by the Joint Select Committee. This is 8 years after the project to refurbish the Hilton started. And he was asked, when is the refurbishment going to finish? They had spent $510 million. And he said to the committee he didn't have any idea when the project was going to finish. That is the reality of what's happening in the country. The total budget is about $640 million. Skip me 2 slides. Yeah, that's fine. I want to talk about Tobago Hilton a little bit because we need to drill into this one. Because Tobago Hilton is a very unique experience in the country. And we need to understand the experience. It's the first time in the post-independence period that we've tried to build a resort hotel on that scale. It was 200 rooms, 198 rooms on a golf course in Tobago on the windward side. And it was a public-private partnership. So they formed a company called Vanguard, and the state had 47% of that company. That company was formed back in about 97 or 98. The private sector partners were Angostura and Guardian Holdings. The same Guardian Holdings Dr. Rowley was commending for their involvement in the Tobago Sandals project. We'll get to that. And the third private sector partner was Hilton International. They had a small share. And the hotel opened in 2000. And it was built by Vanguard, and Hilton just rented it to use it as an operation, as a facility. The money to build the hotel was borrowed on a 10-year bond. 6 years into the project, in 2006, the property was put for sale because they couldn't meet their payments. So you borrow money on a 10-year business plan to do the first resort, large-scale resort that we built in this country, not a business hotel, a resort hotel. And 6 years into the exercise, you bust. It was put for sale in a Miami-based company. They were asking for $139 million. They never got the offers. And in fact, Dr. Rowley, who was then the Minister of Trade and Industry, and this is important, stay with me. Dr. Rowley was the Minister of Trade and Industry between November 2007 and April 2008 when he was fired by Mr. Manning. On the 27th of March 2008, Dr. Rowley addressed a post-cabinet briefing. It was a Thursday. And what was Rowley talking about? He was talking about why the project bust. They had to close it the month before. The building had so deteriorated. It had deteriorated so badly that it could hardly accommodate guests anymore. It had deteriorated so badly, the cash flows had declined to the point they couldn't meet their lending obligations. And it had deteriorated so badly because The private sector partners, including Guardian, weren't paying their share of the maintenance and repair bill. So the same Guardian that is riding to the rescue, sorry about that, my brother, but this is how it is. No names. But the same Guardian weren't paying their share of the bill back in the beginning. The government actually agreed at that time to buy out the private sector shares as a form of a bailout and to put in $45 million of our money to repair the building. The total costs of Tobago Hilton are now, as I have on that slide, about $573 million. That's the capital costs. Hyatt, yeah. The next one I want to talk about is the Hyatt Regency in Port of Spain. And I want to say that Hyatt Regency was completed at the end of 2007 at a cost of $508 million. It opened in January of 2008. And $122 million was spent recently, just completed a couple of months ago, to refurbish the building. So a total capital outlay of about $630 million. And there are two important points to understand about Hyatt. One is that because there were errors in how the documents were put together, Hyatt actually was owing the government of Trinidad and Tobago $334 million. Between January of 2008 and June of 2014, which is 6.5 years, Hyatt didn't pay any money to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And they were able to do so lawfully because we didn't have our documents in order. The public-private partnership agreements can be complicated and they can be quite detailed. I was able to extract from UDICOT's website the figures in the last bit of the rubric here, which show, and it's just really a very conservative estimate of the amount of money spent between 2008 and 2016, and the amount of money spent at Hyatt, and is of just under $2 billion. My information is that in 2016, the amount of money spent in 2016 was close to $700 million TT in Hyatt, the actual turnover of the hotel. So, according to the chairman of UDICOT, UDICOT is the organization that runs Hyatt for the state. According to the chairman of UDICOT, Noel Garcia, the Hyatt is a cash cow that has paid back for itself. Okay? I'm going to wrap up now, and I'm going to give you an overview as to what our research proposal was. Because notwithstanding the different bits and pieces that I've pulled together, which is what I just outlined for you, there's a lot of things we don't know. So we don't know, and this is what the research proposal is this. And this is what we asked for. Rishi will give a detailed account of how that whole process of asking and replying went. But the first thing we asked for was management agreements. Where are the management agreements for those hotels? What are the contracts? What is actually the contract we have with those 3 hotels? What are the total revenues and turnover? How is the revenue shared? What are the provisions for repairs and maintenance in terms of how frequently it should be done? In terms of how the money is reserved? Is there a special reserve or a sinking fund, as we call it? And in terms of spending, what money has actually been spent? And if it's been spent by who? Human resource development is a very important part of the tourism argument. A big part of the tourism argument currently being advanced is that in fact it's good because it produces jobs and people get trained to international standards and so on and so on. Does that actually happen? In the 3 existing hotels, does that happen? Have we seen many local managers of those hotels? Have we seen many local food and beverage managers, local chefs? What have we seen? What has been the program to improve our human resource? Financial audits, we asked for financial audits of the hotels, which would be a way to map the performance of the hotel as a business unit. We asked for management reviews to see whether there was any professional study as to how the place is operated in terms of management. And lastly, we asked for the details of any tax or duty concessions that may have come from the state. That is a summary of the research proposal. The next thing I want to tell you No. Go back. The next thing I want to tell you is that, in fact, we had information from some anonymous person that some of these hotels, maybe one or more of them, was not complying with these sorts of things. So we asked the Board of Inland Revenue whether, in fact, all the taxes had been paid, whether all the taxes had been paid on time, whether there had ever been any audit or any investigation or any penalties or any interest charged. And we made it clear that we weren't asking for amounts. We just wanted to know and answer yes or no. Was this hotel ever investigated? Were they ever made to pay a penalty? Were they ever made to pay a fine? Were they ever made to pay interest? And lastly, we asked the Ministry of Finance in whom or in which those assets is reposed in the form of Corporation Sole. Corporation Sole holds the shares of the companies like E-Tech and Udicot. We asked the Ministry of Finance whether there had been any financial audits or whether, in fact, there had been any management reviews of the hotels. And I'm going to pause here because I think the 20 minutes is just about, apparently I have 3 minutes and 35 seconds. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to leave it to my colleagues. So for once, I'm going to let you all have the extra time, colleagues. So that's it for now. Thank you. And Rishi will talk about the details of how we did the interrogation. And David has some other important points to make. Thank you.